It's good to go. Let's call ourselves to order. Thank you everyone for joining our October 17th, 2023 Planning Board meeting. And like I said, I really do appreciate everybody's flexibility moving this meeting from our regular scheduled time last week to this week. With that, let's call ourselves to order. Bill Spalding.
Here.
Matt Lowry.
Here.
Jim Hogan.
Here.
Kevin York.
Here.
And myself, Theo Knoll, I'm here. All in order. We have just a couple items on the agenda. The first item is approval of the minutes, and Aaron is joining us, which is wonderful. Does anybody have any edits or comments regarding the September 12th minutes? All right, no edits. Is there a motion to approve the September 12th?
I'll make a motion to approve the planning board meeting minutes from September 12th.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All right. We've got a tie. All right, and all in favor? Matt Lowry?
Yes.
Jim Hogan?
Yes.
Kevin York?
Yes.
Bill Spalding?
Yes.
And myself, all in favor. 5. All right. And regarding the September 26 minutes, any questions or comments, edits? All right. Not hearing any. Is there a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the September 26th planning board meeting minutes.
Fantastic. Is there a second? We'll give it to Jim this time since.
Second.
All right, thank you. And all in favor? Kevin?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Thank you very much. All right. Our next item on the agenda is continuing discussion of the MBTA 3A community overlay and our prep for opening our public discussion at our next formal meeting, October 24th.
Yep, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, I can take this one.
Yes.
So the update for the planning board is that yesterday on October 16th, myself and Aaron presented to the town council a presentation that has been collated by the working group associated with the MBTA multifamily district. If members of the board are interested, I can run through a dry run of this and synthesize some of the feedback we got during the town council presentation. But the next step would be for us to present this to the public and start soliciting feedback. And I've coordinated with the chair in terms of setting a cadence for those to be approximately once a month between now and the end of the year.
Yes, and we're scheduled to do those October 24th, November 14th at the first meeting, and then I think December 12th at the
Yep.
Yeah,
and
please.
And then the other thing just to note is concurrent with the presentation of these maps that we've collated as part of the working group is now focusing on trying to come up with a draft bylaw text. We've gone through it, I believe twice already as a working group. So let's take get a set of red lines. Those set of red lines have gone over to town staff to solicit what I'll call some more technical information from specifically Bill Renault and Benny, the ISD building inspector. So we're anticipating getting some of that feedback in the near term, and there's some additional information that Bill's going to try to put together in terms of how you could actually cite one of the minimum lots in terms of trying to make sure and validate it is a buildable concept. So based on those, we'll there'll be more to share, and then the intent is to have the ability to start the review of the bylaw text itself in conjunction with the bylaw review committee early next year. So I'll quickly go through this. If other members of the planning board have questions, I'm more than happy to answer any other questions they may have. But this is the presentation that was presented to town council last night. So
Jim, I'm
Summary.
just curious, did anyone watch the meeting? This is Erin. Did anyone have a chance to see the meeting? We were pretty late, but I'm just curious.
Yes, Aaron, I did watch it.
Okay, all right, just so you could get real-time feedback. Okay, thank you.
Yep. So so as everyone here on the planning board and potentially members of the public who look like they've called in may be aware, but the high level summary is that we are proposing the working group that has been convened with members of town council, planning board, ZBA, environmental sustainability committee, and a resident within the town have come up with a multifamily overlay district centered around the Wakefield commuter rail station. The purpose of this district is to comply with state zoning requirements under Section 3A or 40A, also known as the MBTA Multifamily or MBTA Communities Act. This proposed multi-district would allow multifamily housing developments as of right to a maximum of 4 units per lot, and the district excludes some of the commercial lots along North Ave, Main Street, and Albion. So some existing, we have this flow chart which people can review at their leisure if you want to get a little more into the weeds, but just to level set, as of right in this context means that it's a development that would be allowed without any additional discretionary permits such as a special permit, a variance, or another zoning amendment. Special permit in this context is a discretionary permit, which means that you could reject the development on the basis that it had more units than is allowable per the underlying zoning, and it's discretionary in nature, which is not allowed for this multifamily where it has to be as of right. And multifamily in this context is 3 units or more. For reasons I can get into further in the presentation, we elected to proceed with a district where would have 4 units as of right. Some of the impacts if Wakefield elected not to comply with this state law. When the law was originally developed, they were identified Housing Choice Initiative, Local Capital Project Fund, and MassWorks infrastructure programs that communities that are non-compliant with the law would not be eligible for. Over the last 3 years, Wakefield received $3.6 million. As of recently, Erin, under her guidance and leadership, have won. There was one grant that was announced yesterday. It was over $500,000, and I think there's another grant that we just won as well. So that 3.6 number is going to start going up. Additionally, and separately, after the law was announced in 2020, this year the state announced that there's 14 additional programs, which I've listed on in here, that you're no longer eligible for if you're non-compliance as well. Additionally, and more hard to define, the Attorney General has threatened legal action for communities that are non-compliance. Don't really know 100% what that means, but there's obviously some sort of other nebulous, undefined potential impact for communities that elect not to be in compliance with this law. So what does the law that we're being required to do actually entail? The state law requires that communities establish a multifamily district where as multifamily, so 3 units or more, are allowed as of right, i.e. you can't have a discretionary permit for it. For Wakefield specifically, it means that we need a district that's going to have about 1,700 units as of right. Translates for us, we have a minimum acreage of about 114 acres. One of the key elements is that you have to have a minimum density allowable of 5 units per acre based on the existing lots that exist today. District can't be more than half a mile for Wakefield, our 2 commuter rail stations. It can't have any age restrictions, so you can't make it so it's, for example, only for senior housing, and you can't make it so there's bedroom restrictions that would make it so it's not suitable for families with children, i.e. you can't make it so it's only allowable to build studios. Again, for this purpose, multifamily is 3+ units per dwelling. So how does that compare where we are right now as a community? Right now in Wakefield, no multifamily 3 units or more are allowed as of right. What the town currently has is that it's about 2/3 of the town land is zoned for single family dwellings only. There are 2 families that are allowed as of right in general residence, mixed use, and business districts. So what's being proposed by the working group? On the screen, you can see these blue shaded regions are where we're proposing as the multifamily zoning district. You can see that it's really centered on our business district between North Ave, Main Street, on both sides of Albion. There's an additional section to the west of North Ave, kind of in the west end, as well as to the east of Main Street. One of the things that the working group wanted to do when we did this was we wanted to focus on creating a zone that really is focused on our business district and not just on the Wakefield commuter rail station, because we think that there's also some good bus infrastructure you can see on this map with a series of bus stops that are denoted along Main Street. So how does the proposed district compare to the existing zoning? In the existing zoning, so this map shows the existing zoning. You can see the dashed blue line denotes what the proposed overlay district would entail. You can see that business, there's a big chunk of overlap with business, as well as general residence where 2 families are allowed as of right today. So the difference between what's allowable today is 2 families versus going up to 4. In terms of some of the dimensional requirements, the working group is elected as a way to make this easier in terms of simplicity. Take the existing mixed-use zoning that's on Wakefield's books today and copy and paste a lot of those dimensional requirements to have a level of consistency. So really, so you can see this table, as of right, the mixed-use zoning doesn't have as of right, so that's not applicable, but we have to have a 4 in order to meet the guidance. Same minimum lot size, building height, maximum stories, minimum open space, and parking spaces. Parking spaces, one thing I'd like to highlight that we've gotten some feedback from different people within the town that the 1.5 parking spaces per unit, which is consistent with the existing parking requirements in Wakefield zonings, may be too high for the intent of this zone. And there's some interest in potentially lowering it. And that's one of the things the working group is looking for active feedback from this group as well as others. The other thing, just from a technical perspective, the final unit count for this district ends up being 2,355, which is greater than the minimum of that 1,700 we talked about earlier, as well as 16.3 dwelling units per acre, which is in excess of the 15 units. I'll pause here and say that 16.3 was a number that was difficult to get to without some push and pull in terms of what we were including and what we weren't including. And it's one of the reasons why when we looked at this, we initially looked at potentially having a zone around Greenwood commuter rail station. But ultimately, because the existing lots in Greenwood are bigger than the ones around the Wakefield commuter rail station, what it ended up doing is that it made it so you'd have to have more units as of right, up to 6, in order to get that minimum density. We did not feel that that was an appropriate as of right scale based on the existing neighborhood around Greenwood. And that's why the working group elected to concentrate around the Wakefield commuter rail station, because we felt Greenwood allowing 6 units as of right on those lots, even if those lots are a little bit bigger, didn't feel appropriate. We felt that there's other zoning mechanisms that would be potentially more appropriate for that. And we felt as if the town was interested in upzoning or allowing some additional units around Greenwood, it would make sense for us to potentially look at that in a separate effort where we weren't constrained by what the Section 3A law is. So maybe we allow 3 units as of right around Greenwood, or 4, but we don't have to get into these horse trading games of ensuring we have a minimum density that we're respecting for the state, especially given the fact that we felt that the size of the district around the Wakefield commuter rail station was modest enough that we felt like compliance would be achievable just on that district alone. So what does that mean in terms of context for compared to existing multifamilies? So we pulled up some photos of existing multifamilies. You can see there's one on Pleasant Street with 4 units, one on Richardson with 4 units, Wakefield Ave with 3, and on Avon with 4 units. These are kind of some of the existing units completely unimpacted. Some of these, and Councilor Dombrowski brought up a good question, some of these some of this housing probably would not be compliant with the proposed multifamily district, because we're requiring a specific amount of open space on each of these parcels that these may or may not accommodate. And same thing with some of those parking requirements I mentioned earlier. One of the things we're looking at in terms of if what we have right now as a proposal is really the right one. But we think likely in terms of from a built environment perspective that this would invite is it probably would invite the most recent good example of something similar to what we think would probably end up happening would be the building that was really recently done on Chestnut, 3 units on about a 7,000 square foot lot. As a reminder for some of the folks who know about this, this was an existing building that was converted into a multifamily. So it's not like it drastically, went from nothing to something, but we envision that it's probably, if you're looking at what a built environment of some of these units would be, this is probably something where you could potentially see it as a precedent. From a development context perspective, in terms of overall Wakefield, right now, today, Wakefield has about approximately 11,000, a little bit over housing units in the town per our last census. The current housing units in this district that's being proposed is 1641. So it's not that far off from the minimum required. And the proposed housing units that we have right now is 2,355. So the upshot is, if you were to take all the houses on all the lots and they all were wiped clean, you could theoretically, as of right, build 714 more than what exists today, which is about 6% more than the existing housing stock. Now, do we think that's going to happen overnight? Absolutely not. We think that it would likely be something that could potentially play out over a number of years, and we don't think we're ever going to get up to that full 2,355 based on these numbers. I noticed Erin's raising her hand, so I'll yield the floor to her.
No, I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. I just realized I did raise it. Nope.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. The other context is that, the proposed district represents approximately 3% of Wakefield total land. And you can see in this map that we provided little pins of where all these different photos were taken of the different houses that were, showing as context. Reasons for the proposed district. So the working group, when we convened, we thought that this district could increase housing options near transit. Specifically, we've got the commuter rail, which we have to do per the state, but we also felt that we had a quality bus infrastructure along Main Street that it would make sense to have housing on both sides of in order to try to encourage and allow for additional housing types around transit options that we have to potentially reduce long-term dependence on cars. And we just felt in general, increasing housing option types for everyone in town made a lot of sense. There's a lot of people who are interested in potentially downsizing or so they don't have to age in place, potentially freeing up housing stock for other home, potential residents or residents who are looking to expand, as their children leave the home and such. We're interested in increasing what I'll call gentle density rising around our downtown business district to help drive foot traffic and help facilitate more economic development with our businesses in the downtown area. And we felt it was, it made a little more sense from, a geographic equity perspective, instead of having it all concentrated just around the commuter rail station, to have it really be over our whole business district area in order to make it so it's kind of a more balanced district than we were originally proposing. One of the other things that I would note is that you notice that it looks like there's all these kind of odd buffer zones along North Albion and Main. That's because what we've done is we've explicitly excluded lots that front those commercial corridors, such that we don't take our commercial corridors and cannibalize them by having them all be converted to 4-unit multifamily as of right. They're still going to be maintained under our existing zoning, which has a series of other restrictions such that, we could potentially have more mixed use developments be shuttled towards those main corridors. And potentially, with the appropriate reviews, that's where we also view likely more of the higher density type of developments that we didn't necessarily want to steal lots from with a 4-unit. Additionally, and I think one of the things that Councillor Smith Galvin really emphasized, and I think is worth repeating, the state's currently experiencing a major regional housing crisis, housing shortage. The state, by their own estimates, thinks that the greater Boston / Massachusetts is short 200,000 units of housing. in order to keep up with our population growth. We think that this is a way that we could encourage some amount of housing growth in town without having it be a major impact to the neighborhood character, because we think that going from 2 units, which is already allowed as of right, and up to 4 isn't such a big jump that it's going to be a major impact to the neighborhood character. Also considering the fact that there's existing multifamily housing in these districts that exist today. So in terms of pivoting over to the implementation schedule, we had the presentation last night. We're doing the public forums where we're looking to be soliciting feedback from the public over the next handful of months. We're going to be presenting to the ZBA, environmental sustainability. Those meetings have been nailed down. We're also looking at going to traffic, council on aging, and disability to have a similar presentation, facilitate more feedback from those groups. We're anticipating that while that occurs, we're also going to be in the process of drafting the actual bylaw spring / early 2024. We'll be trying to finalize that with the bylaw review committee, convene as a working group to make any required adjustments. And then we're anticipating to try to have this be ready for a spring 2024 town meeting. The key thing to understand is that we have to have this zoning in place by the end of 2024 in order to maintain our compliance with the state and not impact our ability to solicit those grants. So we thought there was a lot of value in going to Springtown meeting in order to allow us that if anything were to happen, that we would have a backup for fall. So in summary, the proposed multifamily district is in full compliance with the state zoning law. The proposed district maintains our Wakefield's ability to have state grants we're eligible for, as well as it provides competitive advantage for other state grants that aren't directly tied to this. It allows us to provide zoning that will regulate, review, and guide growth to where we think growth would be most appropriate, while helping also alleviate some of this Wakefield specific and also wider regional housing crisis that we're all experiencing. And hopefully, provide, even if it's a little bit on the margins, but increase the housing options for Wakefield residents. I know a lot of people would like more options as it relates to the different housing units that are, or housing types that are available to them. So if you're interested in learning more info, we've got this QR code on the screen. It's also, you can go to the website that's denoted on the planning board website, where you can get more updates and see all the relevant videos that have been posted in terms of the public presentations and or meetings that have occurred between the planning board, working group that has been convened, town council. All that information is available for review at anyone's leisure. So with that, I'm more than happy to take any questions from anyone from the planning board as it relates to any of this. We have additional information on a variety of topics, as everyone probably can relate and understand. There's so much going on with this law. I could be diving way farther into it, but just trying to keep it as high level as possible. But we have additional information if people are interested in any particular aspect of the law or the decision making that went into this proposed district.
I think something to note too is, like, last night we heard some feedback from a few counselors that, they'd like to do what the bare minimum is. And I think, everyone's opinion is entitled to their opinion. And I think what we'll use these public hearings is to gather all this information. And I think it helps guide this MBTA working group committee in kind of that final direction we need to go. I think most of the groundwork has been done for all this, and Jim has done a really great job. But I look at these next 3 meetings as really, and then meeting with some of these boards as kind of, information gathering, how we best move forward to best prepare ourselves for that Springtown meeting. Because, we want to listen to the community as well. Something I also want to note, and I spoke to someone today, is it was changed back in 2021 that this zoning change for multifamily is now simple majority, not 2/3. And so I think that's something, Jim, we might want to consider adding to our slides as well, so the public knows. But yeah, I think this PowerPoint is really great, and happy to answer any data questions as well.
Yeah.
Jim, go ahead, Theo.
No, I was just gonna ask for the board's reactions.
Hand up. Really appreciate this presentation, and it's great to see how it's added more information. And I just wanted to ask Jim and Erin, what type of feedback do you want from the board tonight? Because I'd love to give some feedback about the presentation. I also would like to talk a little bit about how we want these meetings to go and how else we can advertise them to make sure we do get a bigger group. And I was wondering, yeah, just that's, I guess, my first question. What type of feedback do you really need tonight?
So I will say this. This presentation is a living, breathing document. I'm trying to incorporate feedback from as many parties as possible in order to try to continue to make it better. So if you have anything in particular that you are noticing that you think that we can do to make it clearer, as you can probably imagine, as someone who's been engaged in this topic for a long period of time, I feel like there can be sometimes you lose the forest through the trees aspect. So if you, as someone who's looking at it fresh, has feedback on terms of how we're presenting this information, absolutely glad to to hear that. Either you can, say what you want to say now, or you can provide written comments, and then we'll try to take that and incorporate it either way. Additionally, love to hear other people's feedback as it relates to the content of, does what is being proposed make sense? Do we think that it is too much, too little? Why did you change this street? Those types of things. I'd love to hear from the other members of the planning board. In terms of how we want to run this process with the public, my intent is to basically run through that presentation that we just presented and then open it up to solicit any feedback from the public as it relates to, locations that they think are appropriate or inappropriate, scale, all those types of things. I think we're really looking to get, just general level feedback. I think I would say that the two things that are known things that we're going to be looking for feedback on are parking, as well as I believe we're going to be trying to get our arms around open space requirements. That may be a little more technical aspect of it. We're going to be working with Bill Renault to try to lay out, if you have a 4,000 square foot lot, which is the minimum lot size, a house that could realistically accommodate 4 units and 6 parking spaces, which we currently own, plus a 30% open space requirement. Is that something that's a pipe dream or something that's realistic? And then we'll probably try to start having some of those conversations with the board as we get that information. Maybe not tonight, but as I get more of that actual information in a presentable form.
All right, thanks, Jim. So presentation wise, it is too much information, and we know that. For somebody consuming this for the first time and really seeing the presentation, it's so much information. I think it's important to set up the presentation and say expectation wise for the evening to make sure we're saying, okay, we have 7 or 8 minutes of a presentation I'm going to go through, or we're going to go through, and we'll hold questions until after. We're going to have this much time for questions, meaning if we start the meeting at 7:15 and the information is from 7:15, say, to 7:30, if it is 15 minutes of you presenting, from 7:30 to 8:30, we'll be entertaining questions from the public. I really want there to be on our agenda like a timeline of when the open discussion will be. If we want it to be an hour and a half, 2 hours, that's totally fine. But I think we should, as a board, agree on that this evening and have that in our agenda. I also would like to see a presentation slide such as what we're looking at now of a timeline. I think when you go through that timeline, I'm thinking if I'm for the first time looking at this, I really want to see just a line going across with spring meeting, end of 2024, like all those milestones that we're trying to meet. I think that would be a simple graphic that can be added that will help on this slide. So when we're looking at the Q&A slide right here, what is it that we want on here to help keep us on track? for the meeting, whatever, and it could be questions and answers. Tonight, we are looking for answers or suggestions or comments on A, B, C, and D.
I think that's a really good point, Bill. And I think too, you know, I don't want to be not compliant with the state because we've gotten so many wonderful grants through the state. And I really don't want to leave it as an option that this isn't going to happen, you
Mhm.
know? So we want to make the best of it. So I think that should be a big bullet point too. And I don't want to spend a bulk of the questions and answers going through that I don't want to comply because I don't think we're going to get anywhere with that. So I think we really just need to nail down like what our ultimate goals are to make this a district that works for the community. And I think we can work out the parking and all that internally, but you know, yeah, I think it's like 3 bullet points of what we want accomplished from these public meetings from the public to be in compliance. That's my opinion from an internal person.
Yeah, I think that's a really good and constructive point because you're setting people up to start to give you positive or constructive feedback around I don't know, not necessarily design, but what it would take to be in compliance and not to be just saying nay. So I think that's helpful.
Yeah, I think that's good feedback. I do know that one of the reasons why we structured it the way that we did was we wanted to let people know that there's other things that we can dive into. You know, if people are interested in additional background or additional districts that we looked at. But I hear what you're saying in terms of we could probably pull those up on an ad hoc basis. People start asking questions, and if people are really interested in those, though that information, the backup, they can either ask the question and or they could look at it after the fact at their leisure. So I think that prompt is probably a good way to try to frame the discussion and have it be more productive. Similar to what we did with the Lake District when we had that overlay presentation some time ago. Was there anything in terms of, go for it, Matt.
Yeah, I think one thing we were thinking is that a lot of these meetings, people are gonna attend one of them, and that's about it. So it needs to be general enough where you're speaking to someone for the first time each time. It would be nice to have certain questions for each meeting, but I really don't expect people are gonna tune in for 3 of these meetings and actually, you know, wait at some point to ask certain questions. So this is set up to hit as many people as possible, knowing that people are gonna tune into one of these if they have some time, or they'll look at it later, and that's about it.
I fully agree with that point. Is that I think that to your point, Bill, I think that if we want to structure, so we say these are the pieces of feedback we want, but it needs to be generalized enough that someone doesn't need to come to a series of 3 in order to feel like that they truly were able to participate.
Right. I think like to Matt's point too, like one slide here, Q&A with the ABCD, that would be for all of the meetings. Nothing specific broken out like this one's for parking, this one's for density, this one's for map. I think, yeah. So as a planning board this evening, do we want to narrow down with your guidance, Jim, on what those bullet points are? I would love that during your presentation, that it doesn't have to be just you answering all these questions, that all of us can get involved in through this PowerPoint, and through you and Erin, we could learn a little bit more about the talking points that we want to stick to. I love that Erin expressed that we need to do this. There's no like either or, it's going to happen. It's going to go in front of, meaning it is going to go to town meeting in the spring, right? If not, it goes in the fall. But the thing is, it's going to it, and the town will decide. So we just need, as Matt said, to get the message out as much as possible. So, I mean, our end game goal is that at spring meeting, town meeting, we don't want any new questions. We want everybody there to have experienced this PowerPoint and a discussion or something. That way, when we get there, it's just as clean as possible. I think that's going to be the secret to the success of town meeting.
Yeah, I think that if we wanted, I think if you were just to ask me off the cuff, what are the things that we're really truly looking for feedback on? We're looking for feedback on, is 1.5 parking spaces per unit the right number? Do people, one of the things that we do have, which I'm loath to start bringing up, but it did come up at the town council meeting, is we do have an alternative compliance pathway, which is, I'll call it the minimum pathway. It really consists of an additional section around the Moulton Playground and the omission of the 2 zones on the eastern half of the site, or eastern half of the proposed district. This became a big talking point at town council, minimum versus the proposed district, and why we were going through those 2 things. I think I'd love to get feedback from the public on that, because I think we heard very clearly what a handful of the councilors thought, and then I think we heard very clearly that there was maybe some disagreement from the council as it relates to either or position. So that's probably something that we do want to have a conversation on. I don't necessarily know if I want to raise it as like a, hey, we were proposing this, but do you want to do something less? So there's a little bit of a push and a pull that I'd be interested in understanding what the planning board thinks as we're getting teed up for this. And then, so it's really parking, it's the minimum versus the other. And then are there any red flags that people have as it relates to generally, like, no, we think that X, Y, or Z district or this street doesn't make sense. That way we can get ahead, because my anticipation is that a lot of people, when they first hear about this, they're going to immediately go look where their house is and see if it's in or out. And that may impact their support or not support for the proposal.
I'm kind of curious, what's the rationale for striving for the minimum? Why did certain councilors only want to do the bare minimum there?
The feedback that we got from certain councilors was that they felt that they disagreed with the premise that the 4 units as of right was what we've been calling the gentle density increase, and they felt that it was not materially consistent with the neighborhood character. They felt as if they felt that this was a law that they did not like, and they felt it was being imposed by the state on the town. We should do the bare minimum to comply so we could maintain our grant eligibility, do nothing more than that, and that the 4 units as of right is ceding too much control and too much development oversight.
Okay.
There was an added comment to that too, Jim, if I could follow on that Councilor Dombrowski found that one of the examples, I think the one in my neighborhood over here on the west side, didn't fit into the which, if you want to bring that up, did not fit into the scale and the affordability, from what if I remember correctly.
You're correct. He made mention that any development that would occur under this multifamily district would not include a subsidized housing inventory count, and therefore would negatively impact our ability to meet the 10% threshold to avoid being subject to 40Bs.
That's a really good point. We need to be ready and right on target for, like, when that comes up, and maybe that's something that is added to a slide about subsidized or affordable, however it needs to be phrased correctly to tie into the housing plan and 40B. I'm trying to think of anything else that came up last night. It was late.
Mm.
You guys did a terrific job. I was impressed after after that meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
and I think there was discussion too, like, why don't we build off what we've already like started on the Foundry Street area? And I think
Right.
people have to remember at the end of the day, I was on a meeting this morning with executive office of housing and livable communities. This is capacity building. It's a zoning change. This does not mean that all this housing is going to be built. And this is all based on an Excel spreadsheet. That is how we're getting these figures. But I think what Wakefield is doing is we'd like to see these developments happen, but it's not going to happen. And I think we've kind of done a good job already. And I think this is part of the story. And maybe we rethink it this is a positive thing for our community. But we are doing a good job already with the special permit process along Foundry Street, along our main street, where we have a higher affordability within that area already. With this statute, it would be 10% if you went higher. But I just think we're doing a good job already with our mixed use multifamily, that we've kind of been ahead of the curve. And those numbers actually probably wouldn't really work when it came to the acreage and things like that. So I just wanted to kind of say that to whoever's on the public as well. We did look at Foundry Street. There's some issues too with Crystal Lake kind of encroaching with some of the mapping too into that area. So some of the units wouldn't count. But I just wanted to kind of make that plug, because that was kind of thrown out there as well. Like, why don't we just work with what we already have, type of thing. So.
And Aaron, if I may, just for folks who are unaware and haven't been involved in the history of this, the affordability component that we're talking about, one of the things about the state law that we perceive as a major negative is they wrote it that the maximum that you could require a developer to have for affordable housing as a percentage of the development would be 10%. What that meant practically is that unless we started allowing 10-unit developments as of right, you're not really allowed to have an affordable component as far as we understand it, which we felt 10 units as of right was not an appropriate zone within any of our districts. So that's why we ended up dropping it, because of the way the state law was written. Not that we don't think affordability is a major issue, and not that we don't think it's important, but we don't think that this is the right tool to address that specific affordable housing stock. With that being said, we're not the only community that's subject to this. The thought and the intent by the state is to address that 200,000 housing shortage, is that by Wakefield, Stoneham, Reading, Saugus, Malden, all the other communities that are on the MBTA land, they're going to have to be passing similar districts, that eventually, if more housing units are delivered on a region-wide basis, that would help address the housing shortage from a supply perspective, and eventually lead to a long-term decrease in rents. Again, one district that we're doing isn't going to solve the affordability crisis, and that's definitely not what we're warranting, but that's the thought process from the state level why we're seeing this.
And to move this kind of along, and I think that's really, important that everyone knows that, but to move this presentation part along for us to go on October 24th, I think let's circle back to what those questions are. And Jim, the more I think about it from these public hearings, I don't know if asking the public, like parking spaces, setbacks, open spaces, like really, like, I feel like that's an internal discussion that has to be decided. Yeah, it may get brought up, but I think if we're thinking of like 3 bullet points that need to be asked, I think it's more bigger picture than those types of things. And if you disagree, that's fine. But the more I talk about it, I think it needs to be kind of not higher, more straightforward. And if there's any
Studied
other
by
members
people who are looking at it from a technical lens.
Right.
I would leave it more to those folks, because, people will say more traffic, cars on the street. And I think that's something we need to figure out. But I think we need to look at it more bigger picture within these discussions. And I don't know if anyone else feels that way as well. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think if we could come up with that 3 to 5 different talking points, and then as a board discuss how we want to put it in a priority or what they are. And one comment on what both of you were just talking about, something that really struck a chord with me last night. I think it was you, Jim, when you mentioned the whole foundry area and all that. It's important that we leave what's commercial, commercial. Was that a comment you made?
Honestly, I can't remember if it was myself or Aaron, but I know one
I
of
can't
us said
either.
that because we're
Yeah.
both very focused on that, and that was one of the main goals.
Yes. I think that's a really important comment to make during the presentation. And maybe it even needs to be on a slide near the map when you are designating the areas, whether it's spoken. But if it is added, it's like we are not looking at changing our commercially developed areas or zoned areas, however you want to phrase it, to make it tie into the rest of the presentation. That was just a really good point. I think that's going to help many who attend the meetings and town meeting to understand.
And I think these districts benefit our commercial areas. You know, and I think we've heard loud and clear from a lot of people that they don't want to see these larger developments within town. So if we allowed those by right, up to however many stories, units, I don't think that would make people very happy. So I think what we're kind of promoting here, and I think, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, is, you know, these districts are supporting our commercial districts without increasing, you know, creating larger developments here within town, and staying true to neighborhood character. So
yeah, that was it. Yeah, that was it, Erin. It really made a lot of sense. I felt that you both were just on, like, the comments coming back and forth, whether you remember them all or not. I guess we can go to video and watch them and then once that's posted. But there was like a switch that went on for both of you when the conversation back and forth with town council. And it was just, some of the responses were just so good. So I think looking back at the video might help figure out what that dialogue was to pull some of that verbiage into the presentation, whether it makes it to a slide or it's verbally presented.
No, that's all great feedback. Yeah, I think that we'll have to go back to the drawing board in terms of the specific items we're looking for feedback from the public. Besides, I think really the public, the feedback in terms of the map itself is a major component, and then just getting, you know, as much as I don't want it to be a soapbox for people to rail against the state, I feel like that we do need to allow some ability for people to express their opinions of what the process is, just because I don't want it to become this thing that is, you know, being dictated, you know, without any level of ability for people to express what they truly feel.
Yeah, you could joke about it at the beginning and say, okay, the first 5 minutes is for everybody to vent. Everybody unmute at the same time and just start yelling, and then
No.
and then we'll get on with it.
So I know Kevin, I haven't heard much feedback from you, but I'd love to hear what you think in terms of, you know, some of the conversations that we're having right now as it relates to this topic.
Yeah, I mean, on the last one, I see what you mean about giving people a place to vent, but I think we probably want to limit that, or it'll just suck the whole meeting down that path where people want to complain about that, when in reality we have to do this and we have to figure out a way to make it work. So I think it's, you know, acknowledging that right away and saying we want to focus on constructive feedback to allow us to get to a point where we can implement this plan so that we meet the state requirement. Overall, I like the flow of it. I would agree with Bill's comment earlier that it probably is too much, and in certain areas goes too into the weeds for the general public. I'd have to review it again to make any recommendations on what to cut, if anything. But I do think that's true. And to Aaron's point earlier, I think we want to keep it fairly high level, the feedback from the public.
Okay. Yeah. And one thing, for all the different members, I do plan on pushing this out to everyone. So more than happy to, get feedback. Obviously don't CC the whole board, but just CC myself and Aaron, I'd request. And we'll continue to try to sharpen this presentation to as best as we can.
Well, one part that I do really like is the examples of where housing of this type is already occurring so that people can visualize it. And I think for the most part, those do fit into the character of those neighborhoods. Even the last one, which is kind of more similar to what we're envisioning with the development that would happen with this, I don't feel like is that out of character for that neighborhood. So I think it's good to show those visuals. It'll help people to sort of internalize it.
Yeah, that's great feedback.
It looks like one thing that, and we've talked about this in no discussion, is that we're trying to shift the focus of this district away from just being centered around the community station and bring it downtown to where it's going to do everyone good. And it sounds like people striving again, and I'm going to keep saying this over and over. If we keep striving for the minimum, it's going to be a detriment to downtown because we're going to pull people away from downtown and send them around basically a big community station unless we get some more development down there. So I think we need to keep stressing why we're pushing this east to center it in what we believe is the jewel of our community, which is our downtown, and get that more vibrant. And I think if either some of the town councilors didn't see what we're trying to do, which is kind of telling, or they're purposely just again trying to do the minimum and get by with that. But I think we really need to sell it that this is to enhance Wakefield and downtown, not just do the bare minimum and walk away.
Yeah, I had that same thought, Matt, after the presentation, reflecting on it. I think that the way that we have this presentation structured, we probably need to do a better job of articulating the why as it relates to why we're not doing the bare minimum. And I think your comment, if we keep shooting for the minimum, it's going to hurt the downtown, is a succinct thesis of the rationale. So thank you.
Yeah, we've got to try to shift the focus of this circle, to the east, but still hold on to this is what we have to do, but this is really what we want to do. We want to pull this and get it to where we want it to be, which is on our downtown. Unfortunately, the train station is not in the middle of downtown. It's a few blocks away. So I think, to me, and I didn't see the meeting yet, but just from what I hear, and I kind of sense this is what was going to happen because unfortunately it's Wakefield and we always strive to do the bare minimum, is that this is what's going to happen. And we need to try to push that a little bit more. Why we purposely did this to shift it to the
Another,
I'll go for it, Kevin.
Another point to just kind of extend off of what Matt was saying, if we go beyond the bare minimum and expand the area where this can happen and we're encouraging it to happen, ultimately it's going to encourage more housing in Wakefield, which from everything I hear, people want that because they want more affordable options of all different types. So if you have more areas where you can do this type of development, I think the hope in the long run is there's more housing supply, which is going to drive some of the prices down.
True. I think I hear a lot about, well, what about senior housing, affordable senior housing? What about young families? And then we talk about the density and the parking and close to downtown, and the right away back and forth seems to go, we're not Malden, we're not Somerville, we're not this. How, and I think we're going to get some of that type of a reaction. And this is mostly from me just being on some of the community pages on Facebook and whatever, but I think we just need to be ready. Do we, as a board, want to float parts of the plan out on any of these community groups over the next week? Just to see what we get for reactions from people? So, and we don't have to engage or respond, but I think if we're advertising this, and of course, Jen McDonald and Erin and the crew, and we'll have it on the agenda and it'll be on the site. Do we need to advertise in a bigger way on social media? Is that something the board's interested in doing so we can get even larger attendance maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I would, I think we should be doing more presentations beyond these three and the ones you've scheduled with the individual committees. I think targeting it more specifically to Friends of Lake Quantapowhat or individual neighborhood associations, I think that's maybe a more effective way to go. We can get to some social media kinds of stuff sort of maybe after, this first push.
Yeah,
I would I would
but-
maybe advise against that.
Yeah.
I personally find it social media in general, not even work related, very toxic. And
Yeah.
so I think what Theo is saying, and I remember doing this through the master plan and Vision 2030, is finding these like super connector type groups, people in town that can share the presentation, the message, the meetings that are going to be going on. And hopefully, these are why we're having these meetings, for people to come. I think when you put it on social media, it can cause a lot of turmoil between folks. And so I would advise against it. That's just I don't think I understand where you're coming from, Bill, but I think there's a lot of different other avenues that we could be using.
Sold.
Understood. I like the community, the super connector story too. See if we can get that going. I want to make sure, and maybe it is, let's see how next week goes. And then we work from there. If there's like 4 people next week, we need to really notch it up.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah, I think the intent is to reach out to the item to try to have them to allow, try to get the word out via the item, as well as obviously our website. And I think it's going to be a lot of word of mouth and those connecting groups. And I think, to Aaron's point, there's the other, besides the ZBA, environmental sustainability, trying to go to traffic, council on aging, disability within the town, those groups. I think that we've talked about Friends of Lake Q previously. I think there's a couple other groups that we've talked about. I think those are the main groups that we're looking to try to engage in order to try to help drive some of the traffic to our meetings. But to your
I
point,
think the
Bill,
chamber would be a great group too, especially as we're trying to drive economic development in downtown, having business owners there, even if they're not, even if they aren't residents of town.
Yeah.
So I can work on that.
Why can't we have the November one at the AmeriCal and have it like on Zoom there, everything? I don't know. It's like, buy pizza for everyone. What do we have left in our budget?
honestly, if we could do one in person, I would strongly prefer to do one if we're allowed. But this is where I'm going to look at Aaron and say, is that something that we can accommodate?
At current time, I would say no, unfortunately, but that would be a question. Again, I think we've talked about for higher ups. But
I think it's worth having the conversation. I'm looking at our peer communities, and they're having, even if it's not recorded, they're having at least one in person, like, hey, come take a look at this. And it gives people an opportunity to get off of the Zoom gloom life.
no, I get it.
I'd go for hybrid and see if we can also have it on Zoom. I don't see why we can't do something whether maybe the AmeriCal's too big, but I mean, all those Envision Wakefield meetings we had way back in like whatever 2015, I can't even remember the years now, but those were awesome. The attendance and people, and even if we just get the room at the AmeriCal and not use the basketball, the courts, I am just so eager to get a group together face to face instead of through computers to just like talk. Get rid of the cameras, have charts, print out some things. It's just like stand up in front, have refreshments. Like, how do we really do this to get people to come down? I think of the Envision. One of them we had was at the public library at BB, like right at the entrance. And Ed Dombrowski was standing there and selling the whole thing, and Paul Revis, and we were all there and meeting people from MAPC. Everybody was there just kind of doing their thing, and it was just a great information session. So I don't know how we pull that together, and not for the first one, obviously not for next week, but maybe that November one's like the right timing, or maybe we do have something special in January or February.
I mean, I could see where we'd have a meeting where it's not a planning board meeting per se, like a regular scheduled one. It's a special meeting in person for the purposes of reviewing this single topic. I know that's what I believe Reading is doing. They've got, a meeting with their equivalent body that's having a meeting just for this topic, a working group, or not working group, like a community workshop, I think is the term that they're using. But something like that, I think, makes a lot of sense. I mean, we don't necessarily have to, I know, and I apologize, Mr. Chair, it was already 8 o'clock and stealing an hour of this meeting, but we don't necessarily have to have just regularly scheduled meetings to have a meeting on this topic if we're trying to engage the public.
Yeah. No, this is really valuable discussion. I love the idea of a community workshop. Do we want to take 5 minutes, 10 minutes to coalesce on what we think are the 3 or 5 things we want from the general public? I mean, I think we've got a couple. We've talked about supporting economic development. We've talked about 4 units does help stay true to the neighborhood character, and you had sort of geographic equity, right? Something to that effect.
I think that's really what Matt was saying in terms of supporting the downtown by not making it so all this potential new foot traffic would be weighted only on one side of downtown to make it more balanced. And also to try to increase housing options next to not just the commuter rail and be focused on only that as a transit option, but also the bus route along Main.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
But I think that's a great suggestion, Theo. I think, we talked about a number of the things that we'd be asking for from the public in terms of feedback. I think the general feedback as it relates to the maps that we're looking at would be number one in my mind. I think Aaron's comment about, trying not to start people throwing rocks at each other over parking is probably not the worst idea, just because I feel like that could turn into a toxic discussion that may not be less about the zoning and more about just cars. It feels like every time that comes up, the conversation eventually turns to whether or not street parking should be allowed, which is something that we don't have any say on. That's totally purview of the town council. So I know that came up as a topic last night at the meeting. So I think it's probably something that we don't necessarily want to bring up unless we necessarily we don't have a purview over it. So it probably doesn't make sense to bring up something that is just going to agitate people. But so I think feedback on the map zones is probably number one. I'd be interested if other people had other things that they thought would be a worthwhile conversation to engage with the public on.
Well, Jim, I thought one of the discussions we had about parking was that a lot of these streets, there's already a residential parking component on it. Isn't that correct?
I believe that a handful of them are, but I don't think you can say it as a blanket statement.
No, but when people are going to bring up the issue about, well, you're only going to allow 6 potential maximum parking spaces on a lot, people are going to have more cars. Are you going to prevent people from having 20 cars? That's how how it can be controlled is that, you know, the town can't institute some parking rules for this area, which I believe some of them already have. So, you know, I don't think we should shy away from answering that question. It's been something we've been discussing. We just need to have, you know, the answer for it. And that is one of the options that could happen. So, again, this whole district is to get people to be able to use the commuter rail and public transportation system. You don't have to, you know, the town does not have to allow people to have as many cars as they want. They're buying a unit in a place that only has one parking space. They need to deal with that. So I think we should, you know, address that issue head on. If we just gloss over it, that's something that's gonna foment a lot of the discussion on social media that you can't control and just kind of goes unabated and spirals. So any of these tough questions, I think we should answer them and say what we, you know, what the controls or something like that could be.
Got it. All right, so map feed. So, but how do we? Yeah, I mean, are we saying transportation and school impacts are going to be maybe the fourth and the fifth items on this slide, so that we get through some of the other topics first? So.
I think as it relates to school impacts, we've got that as a backup slide in case people are
Yeah.
requesting additional
Okay.
information as it relates to that. I don't necessarily think that that's something we're going to highlight because,
Yeah. Okay.
Long story short, you're talking about a maximum of 5% to the existing housing stock. And if you look at, I'll just show for the other members of the board's edification. If you look, oops, I went too far.
Yeah, no.
You look at, if you look at our if you look at the housing, or sorry, if you look at the school enrollment, it's been, you know, we've had a lot of development in town over the last couple of years. You know, it's been relatively steady from 2016 through 2020, and then we saw a notable drop in enrollment. Again, I don't know how much we would necessarily want to start getting into sword fights over school enrollment data, but we have that as backup information if need be. So.
All right, that's.
I don't necessarily think that that's something we're looking for the public to provide feedback on. I think
Yeah,
more of the types of things we'd be looking for would be the map, the parking, as Matt mentioned, any other specifics that, you know, the other things that really would be major changes that we could be accommodating or incorporating, you know, would involve if people had strong feelings around, you know, setbacks or any of those other type of dimensional requirements that we're really trying to investigate right now. But I don't know how much we necessarily want to start talking about setbacks and people, because I don't think people are necessarily going to care. And I think it's far too in the weeds, but those are like some of the things that we're looking at right now that could potentially change.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Do we want to brainstorm the top 5 reasons why this is really beneficial, or do we think we've covered all that?
Honestly, Mr. Chair, I think I've got what I need from
Okay.
this session. I think, you know, what I will do is I'll distribute this out to the balance of the board, for you guys to have a copy of it. And if you want to provide feedback as it relates to individual topics or things that we do on the slides, I'm more than happy to take, you know, please send it to myself and Aaron, and we can try to refine the presentation to make it more readable, presentable, or flow better based on feedback from other members of the board. I think we've gotten a lot of feedback here, but I know sometimes it's you don't want to do editing by committee
Yeah.
delete this or this period here, or
Sure.
insert a comma there. That just ends up being a waste of everyone's time.
Understood. Um, do you have verbiage for the letter to the item? And
I have something that's very similar to what we used for
Okay.
when we did the Q&As. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
dig that up, take a look and see if it needs to be refined.
Okay.
And then based on that, I'll probably be sending something over to the item tomorrow or the next day.
Okay. I would think send it to each of us too, because that's like great intro stuff that we want to use so that we can be communicating to others all on our own. I mean, I'm going to the master plan advisory group. I'm sure Aaron is too. I'm going to take it to the open space rec plan meeting tomorrow. The
Yeah.
we're all responsible for bringing at least 10 people to the next meeting. Yeah, are there do we need to make sandwich boards? What are we talking here? Walk around the town. What else?
The one other thing that I would highlight to the members of this group is the intent right now is at the town meeting for us to get some of these materials printed out and to potentially set up a booth of some sort outside of town meeting so
Right.
that people as they're walking in and walking out. Obviously,
Yeah.
town meeting, people who go to town meeting, there's a lot of overlap from town meeting to town meeting. So we feel as if it makes a lot of sense to have some engagement with people, even if, I don't think we can
Yeah.
present because we're not actually voting on it during the town meeting itself, but doesn't mean we can't talk to people on their way in and out.
That's a great idea.
We have a
Yeah.
few more farmers markets before they're done for the year. I think it's the second weekend in November they're done. I can't remember exactly. Maybe it's worth having. I remember I remember that at Town Day we were going to have a booth or something. So I wonder if it's worth talking to some of the town councilors that are in favor and are not, and if they do have a booth, because I know they've had a tent a couple times while we were set up for the Safe Streets bike ballet. Maybe it's worth having something down there.
It's not a bad idea. I'll broach the topic with Aaron.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be a table set up with Jim saying debate me on any type of thing. I think maybe it is just some sandwich boards and signs and everything. If the town council is setting up a tent, I'll reach out to Chair and I'll reach out to a few members and see. So I'll reach out to Jonathan Shines and see what he thinks, or Julie Smith Galvin, to see if they do have plans to have a tent at the farmers market. Sound like a good idea? Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. And I don't know if we even need to be there as much as if we do have some signage or something up there saying, hey, come to the planning board meeting, blah, 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 for, yeah. Graphics
We'll-
that Jen can do.
Yeah,
I
well,
think-
definitely.
One of the big things we need to do at the next town meeting is basically have a handout to give to everyone at that town meeting. And basically firstly ask them to, look into this, attend one of these sessions and learn more about it, because people that, some of us have been to many town meetings. You see the exact same people every town meeting. So if we can get all of those people educated right there, half the battle of getting this through is already done. Because consistency at town meeting, we know that people are gonna show up. Those are the ones that we want to target basically, and give them all the information they need. So when they get there, they know what, in the spring, when they get to town meeting, they've already had this information. So if we basically personally ask them to attend one of these meetings and get involved, get knowledgeable on it, I think that would be, we go pretty much halfway to getting this, moved along.
Yeah, after tonight's meeting, I'm gonna send out some emails personally from me to some of those people that I have spoken to, for that exact, yeah, that's good. I like that, Matt.
I think if we give a little handout about a one-page thing, these are the next upcoming meetings. We appreciate it if you could, invest a little bit of your time and attend one of these. I think that would go a long way.
Can we nail down the agenda possibly for next meeting? Should we have it on there, 7:15 to 7:30 presentation, 7:30 to 8 PM, or 7:30 to 8:30 Q&A? I'd love for that to be on the agenda.
Yeah, how much,
An hour?
yeah, I mean, we don't
We're
don't
not
have any,
constrained by, I
yeah,
think if you open it at 7:15, say there'll be a 15 or 20-minute presentation, and then we anticipate opening comments at 7:30, 35, and then you basically, we can play it by ear based on the feedback that we get from people. I mean, unless there's like a specific need to close it, if we, depending on the other business, Mr. Chair, I advocate we keep it as open-ended as possible. But if we have other business, then we should probably attend to that before embarking on the MBTA, because I feel like that's probably going to be a lengthy conversation.
yeah. At the moment, I don't think we have any other business. I mean, so
I'd like to put a time limit on it. I've just
Yeah.
heard too many nightmares from other towns, and especially
Sure.
Arlington and different.
mhm. You want to, let's give ourselves 45 minutes for public comment.
Yeah, we can always extend it.
Sure. And yeah, and we'll see what we get. So, all right. So agenda. Okay. Terrific. I'm representing the planning board with ZBA at Wakefield 101. So I think between Jim and I, we can come up with the one pager, and I can have that for the 101 as well. So, and be inviting folks. People take away a ton of stuff. The Wakefield 101 is for new town members, new residents. So they pick up lots of stuff about the town. All right. We have just a couple more items on our agenda. The next item, number 4, is discussing the newest 40B proposal that's coming before the town. This is number of lots being consolidated on Nahat Street from 0, 119, 127, and 135 into a 40B. And the ZBA asked for our review and any input we want to give for their meeting tomorrow. So I wanted to put it on the agenda and see if I can capture any comments, and I can draft it a letter and send it.
I know we're
to the
supposed to. This is something I'm like really heated about. So we just do like a vomit emoji and send that. This is, if you haven't seen the plans, it is absolutely disgusting. And I know we need to keep our comments to the bylaws required, meaning safety, vehicular, pedestrian movement within and all that. But knowing some of the abutters and closely knowing some of the abutters, it is atrocious, ridiculous. And I know they cut it down a floor or something, but I believe it's still 5 floors with balconies within 20 feet of property lines with tons of parking below and around. This is just not the place for it. And I know we don't have control of the 40B, and that's not what we need to discuss. But what can we as a board, whether it's the site, Nahant Street, vehicular traffic safety, storm and water drainage, I don't know. I am just at a loss for this. I 100% love the housing that's going in town in the overlay district that we did in 2014. But this is just not the place for it.
Bro, these are not real fucking friends.
Mr. Brendan, thank you.
Brand. Yeah, we got to be careful about just jumping in. This is planning board meeting. You're welcome to listen in, and if so, we could open this up, but that's up to the chair. Brandon, I just muted you. So, that's how I feel about it. But as a board, I would love to see what we could pull together. I don't have anything specific to write to the ZBA, but anybody else have any comments?
Anybody else? I was making a list. We have made other comments that refer to the building massing and the parking precisely around the overall impact that it relates to vehicular access, pedestrian safety, and drainage. So I think we can frame all of that in that context. We sent a letter to the zoning board back in December, speaking similarly about the big development that was happening at 10 Broadway, and we spoke specifically to those issues. We also spoke to the access to the street, there being only one entrance, could be potentially problematic. I think there's some discrepancies between their description of the site, their narrative, and what we see in the site plan. So I'm interested in asking those questions in terms of to what degree is there really accessible open space, because that does provide some modicum of drainage assistance. And I'm not sure there is the 33% open space that they say. We comment a lot about shade trees for a number of reasons, and there are no shade trees on the site. We have commented and encouraged the zoning board to stay true to our inclusionary zoning plan. And in this case, it being a 40B, they're shooting for 25% affordability. I think that's something that we would, regardless of the size, want to hold them to. My personal preference is I'd like to commend them, the site, for having 2 and 3 bedroom apartments. But to your original point, Bill, the building massing is too large, and their narrative also doesn't match to their the renderings, because there are no step backs in the buildings. It is so. I think the L-shaped layout and all of the parking is a poor use of the space.
And just to add one more thing, the very back corner of the lot proposed, I think it also slopes up.
Yes.
I'd have to look at the drawings again, a good 12 or 15 feet. And that's going to obviously require some type of excavation and blasting in that site. So, and there's a pool within like about 50 yards from it. I just from the map, it looks like it is less than 75 feet from that. So it's even less. I was just like my little scale looking at the map. I just don't understand.
Um, Poses problem. So I've already started marking up this letter. So I'll finish it and circulate it around, and whatever comments y'all can give me tonight, I'll incorporate and then forward it along. So the so Ms. Victoria T, I see you've raised your hand. The I'll I'll unmute you in a second, but we really aren't taking a lot of public comment. But given that I'm the one who wants people to attend our meetings, so so let's I will unmute you if I can hit the right button. All right, there you go.
Want to start?
Yeah. So we'll keep it brief. First, we really appreciate the town's interest in this. Oh, can you guys hear me now? Hear us now?
Yeah, but name and address would be helpful.
Yeah. Michael and Victoria Turner, 16 Wilson Road. We're abutters of the Zero to Haunt Street project. This is why we're really encouraged by the planning board taking this issue so seriously. In particular, I want to chime in on that last point there. They were doing what I'd call jackhammering on those excavators last summer. I believe that same pool that Bill mentioned was damaged as part of that work. So I think blasting would only add it on. For additional context, for us personally, there's a lot of culverts and gutters that already are in danger of overflowing that we actually go out behind our house to clean periodically.
Yeah, there's a drainage behind our house, directly behind it. And the property that they're talking about building on is uphill from this. And that culvert with that drain pipe fills with leaves. It's not on our property, but we're the ones who go out and clean it. And I have huge concerns that between all the construction and then this new property, the water will not be like, it'll have nowhere to go. And not only will it have nowhere to go, but that the developer has proven to not be a good actor. And I have concerns that there's going to be a lot of debris left there. And I have concerns that we will once again be the ones responsible for cleaning it. Even again, it's not on our property, but the access point is behind our fence. So I don't know, like that's a major concern for me. As well as the traffic. There's a crosswalk. I walk with my daughter every day. No one ever stops. It's a blind corner. And I'm really afraid that if you start adding in all these more people, someone's really going to get hurt. It's a narrow street. So, and I know you also already know this, but I want to make sure that we're having these points made.
Yeah. I do appreciate, and I think, we're able to speak more specifically to the vehicular access and the drainage and the like. We have also said that the zoning board is good about imposing construction conditions and things like that on developers so that they are responsible for cleaning the site. And I know they have that same process of holding people to it. So between the building department and the zoning board and citizens should handle that issue should the any development be moving forward. So I appreciate that comment. I'm not super familiar with the sight lines on the road, so I think that that's a useful comment too.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate you coming. We'll see you next week. We have spent a lot of time talking about the 3A requirement and the importance of affordability, and in no way are we speaking against that. And like I think we all do, support the town's inclusionary requirement and the positive impact of having 40Bs and more constructive affordable housing development and mixed income development in town. Yeah, 100 units maybe too many, and we'll leave that to that. Any other final comments on this proposed 40B?
Yeah, I agree. Looking at especially the renderings right now for the landscaping, it is pretty pathetic. Especially along the hunt, they're using street trees planted in probably a 2 to 3 foot wide planting strip to basically screen the front of the building, which is completely unrealistic. They will never grow there. One of the things that really gets me on this site is if you go to street view for this and you go back a few years, you see the beautiful trees that they had on that lot that they preemptively cut down in order to not make it an issue. I think they need to be penalized for that and have additional landscaping put in, and then if they need to reduce the building for that. I think we need to do it. There needs to be some natural screening out here. Because again, it's a 4 or 5 story building with balconies overlooking the existing houses. This is not what is really intended for this type of neighborhood. They shouldn't be subjected to this. So I think there's one thing to intend the developers and the whole 40B process to get, this is not the intent of this, is to jam this stuff literally on top of people, not just next to them, but really on top of them and take away the privacy. So I really think they need to up the open space on this, put some more screening and just give them a town mass and this kind of equipment.
So I took 4 comments from that. More better opens. Street trees are absent. The current tree cutting on the site.
No, I'm sorry, the street, they're proposing street trees.
Yeah.
To make it look like they have some screening from the street. So any screening they'll have from the street will be trees planted on public property, which we all know will not grow to what's shown in the renderings.
Okay, yeah, thank you. All right.
And the fact that there were trees there that if they had kept them would have screened this pretty nicely and give them a little buffer, but they chose to preemptively cut them down anyway. So
Yeah, all right. All right. And screening along the back edges as well, right?
yeah, screening between this project and all the abutters that have basically private space. And I don't think anyone had the expectation that they would have a balcony 30 feet above them, 10 feet off of 20 feet off of that lot.
Okay, all right. Thank you. That's helpful. All right. Not seeing any other comments about this, I will type up the letter and circulate it around, and I'll try to get all of your edits so that I can get it off to the ZBA as soon as possible tonight or tomorrow morning. Our 5th item on the agenda is appointing one planning board member as the trustee representing the planning board on our new town affordable housing trust. I'd love to do this tonight. Would like to make a formal vote for it. Matt, I really do appreciate your expressed desire to do it. So are you still interested and willing?
Yes.
Okay. Is anyone else interested or so?
Interested, but I think Matt would be a better addition than myself. So I don't know if there's a second, but if it's possible, I would second his nomination.
All right. So I'll make a formal motion to nominate Matt, if I'm allowed, to represent the planning board at as a trustee of the town's affordable housing trust. And
Second.
second. All right. All in favor? Bill?
Sorry, I lost my connection there. I'm on my phone. I have to recuse myself. I didn't hear what was going on for the last 2 or 3 minutes.
Oh, item 5 is nominating and appointing a member of the planning board to be our trustee to the town affordable housing trust.
Yeah, Matt, I vote for Matt.
Yeah. All right. How about you, Kevin?
Yes.
All right. Jim?
Yes.
All right. Matt, do you care to vote or no?
Sure, but I believe we're supposed to appoint someone, so I don't know if it really needs to have a vote, please. Just say yes, but sure, yes.
All right, good. And yeah, I thought just from my email discussions with Sherry Dalton that it needed to be a formal vote, but
okay.
Yeah. So, and I vote yes, so it's unanimous, and so that's wonderful news. So item 6, future agenda topics. I really do think next week is just 3A, unless unless there are other items that come up. Yeah, Bill.
I'd like to, maybe it can come up under items not anticipated, but we did receive a letter from Clyde Court from Anita, one of the
Yes.
butters that should be addressed, whether it needs to be. I know in a lot of ways, I think you, Mr. Chair, could take care of this, but if it's something that needs to come up and we need to hear from the abutter, then that should be on the agenda, maybe even first for the next meeting.
Okay.
I don't want to discuss it in detail, but
Sure. Yeah.
For 107 Prospect, we worked on that. It was contractor was real good to work with. There's a discrepancy or an issue with some trees and a buffer that the arborvitaes are all dead, and I don't have the letter in front of me, but yeah.
I agree they should go on the agenda and schedule.
Okay. All right.
The attorney and the others to be there, and then we can discuss it at that point. If they can't make the next meeting, then we should go to the meeting after that.
Okay.
I don't think it's crucial that it needs to be done immediately, but whenever it fits everyone's schedule, I think it should definitely be
Agreed.
On the agenda, and because I anticipate we need to take some votes on it.
Yeah. Okay. I will follow up and try to schedule her for the either of the next 2 meetings, depending on her availability. Yeah, Susan.
If it's going to be on next agenda for next week,
Yeah.
how much time do you want allotted?
I would say 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
it's going to need to be probably the owner, the developer, and their attorney. So, it may probably going to be more than 15 minutes if it is even at our next meeting.
All
Just from what I anticipate.
Yeah. All right. That said, I would propose I try to schedule her for November 14th.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, that would be before the 3A discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
So the 3A discussion will be November 14th and December 12th?
3A will be 10/24, 11/14, and 12/12.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I got all right. Other than other expected updates on various things, any other particular topics going forward? Yeah, Jim.
Mr. Chair, I've lost the thread. Where do we stand in terms of we were doing some updates to our rules and regs for the subdivisions. Is that still with engineering? And do we have a timeline for when that review would be completed?
Yeah, so I'm going to schedule a time in that's the first full week of November, trying to find a time with Bill, Bill Renault and myself to go over our proposals. He's reviewing it and should have some suggestions. He also made a comment of having a planning board discussion around paper streets and how those are dealt with and managed, and sent me researching some information around paper streets. So yeah, may be able by to give an update at the November 14th meeting, where that stands. So
I guess the other question I would have, Mr. Chair, is does it make sense for us to put that as, even if it's not something we're going to discuss, something as, even if it's below the line, for lack of a better term, something that we're an ongoing effort that we're tracking as we're putting together these meeting minutes and agendas, just so we know that there's, what the next action item might be.
Yeah. Next. Yeah. All right. All right. I like that. Yeah. The we could reserve time on the 28th of November to discuss it. In detail. All right, thank you. But we'll keep below the line master plan and bylaw review, although I don't, we're waiting to get the green light again. So all right. All right. Moving to item 7, items not anticipated by the chair. Yeah, Bill.
I noticed in the notes on the agenda that there's a link to a job description that was posted for the community growth and development strategist. I don't know if as a board we want to discuss this. I did read through it. It's so much information there. There's one bullet point that scares me and would, if I was going for this job, I would be like, no way. And it's one that reads, develop, manage, and enforce the town sustainability projects. It's the word enforce that would cross this off my list. So I don't know if we have any control, or Aaron, if I don't know if Aaron's still on.
Yeah, I think we lost her.
Control of how this is. Yeah, I don't know if something happened on the west side here, if we both lost at the same time. But I see that it's a full-time position. And if you haven't looked at this, it's at the bottom of the agenda. My computer's back up, and I just want to know if there was any comments from the board or if anybody from our board has helped put this together.
Not directly. I know we talked about it in prior meetings. And I know yeah, so Aaron, I know Aaron drafted this maybe with some other help in town hall. I do think they did not get any applicants, and so I think they're trying to change the title and maybe reclassify it a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to get any applicants. I would read through this, and I don't know what other towns are paying for a position like this, but this is pretty much full-on town planner description.
Yeah.
The definition, the education and experience, I don't know. So 5 years is the only thing. It's 5 years from urban planning with municipal planning and all that. So it's an excellent write-up, and I most of the stuff is there. There's just 2 or 3 things in here, especially the one I mentioned about develop, manage, and enforce. I think once you see that, people aren't gonna want to enforce anything. Not in this position.
Yeah, right. Okay. All right. I'll take that feedback to Aaron. So that's helpful. Town manage and enforce. Yeah. In our emails, we continue to get some requests to participate in a zoning atlas project trying to track zoning by community all over the Commonwealth and I think larger. There's at the moment nothing that we're going to do or follow up with. Just to update the planning board, we received the corrected A&R plans from our last meeting for September 26th. All of our discussion items were addressed. And I think in a couple cases we approved waivers. So those waivers are being drafted and will be followed up upon. We also got an email requesting consideration of creating a scenic byway related to a stretch of Chestnut Drive and whatnot. I didn't get to review it in more detail. So I'll review it and muddle on whether or not that's something we deal with. And lastly, the open space and recreation plan working group meets tomorrow. So they've pretty much got a decent draft. All right. Without if no one has any other items, I will take a motion to. Yeah, Jim.
One other thing, I know that there was a lot of consternation on our last meeting regarding the A&Rs and quality or lack thereof of those submissions. I know one of the things that we broached as a topic was potentially having some sort of guidance documentation on our website that we could post. I think Theo, you put together a draft of that. Is that something that you want to discuss, or do you feel like that's not ready for prime time?
I don't think it's ready for prime time.
Okay.
I bogarted a list that Matt had started, and so I wanted to get a little more feedback, and then I could bring it back to the group. So sounds like that could be another item for November 28th. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. All right. I'm really looking forward to our next meeting, and the meetings afterwards, and really engaging the 3A process. So I would welcome a motion to adjourn so that y'all can get some dinner and fortify for the next meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right, thank you, Matt. Is there a second?
Second,
All right. All right, all in favor, Kevin,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Bill,
yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Susan, just kidding. Yeah, and Theo, yes. Susan should get a vote. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. I really do appreciate it.